I was a man backed into a corner by life itself. 30th day of unemployment, and I found a little girl abandoned on a street corner in the 20-degree chill. She was huddled next to an overflowing trash can, the skin on her arm marred by the telltale, circular scars of cigarette burns. "Mister, I'm cold," she whispered, her tiny, trembling hand grabbing the hem of my coat. Her eyes, they had the same haunted look as my son's the day he was diagnosed with autism. My heart ached. I took her home, never imagining that single decision would completely alter my family's destiny. The winter wind cut my face like a razor. I pulled the collar of my decade-old coat tighter, wandering the downtown streets with no destination. It was the 30th day I'd been laid off, and the 30th day I'd pretended to go to work. My phone buzzed. A text from my landlord. "Frank, next month's rent is due by the end of the week. $1,800. I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling. I had $300 left in my bank account, and the bills were piling up. $2,000 for my son's autism therapy, $500 to help out my parents, another $500 for Sarah's mom. More than $3,000 I didn't have. What was I going to do? Got it. I'll pay on time. I typed back, a lie I didn't even believe myself. A small figure huddled by a dumpster at the street corner caught my eye. It was a little girl, maybe 3 years old, shivering in a thin, ragged dress. Her face was blue with cold. When she looked up at me, her big, tear-filled eyes stabbed me straight in the heart. "Hey, kiddo, what are you doing out here all by yourself? Where are your mom and dad?" I knelt beside her. She just shook her head, her whole body trembling. Without thinking, I took off my coat, wrapped it around her, and lifted her into my arms. She was as light as a rag doll and smelled faintly of sour milk and neglect. As I gently checked her over, a gasp escaped my lips. Her thin little arm was covered in the distinct, perfectly round scars of cigarette burns. "Let's get you to a police station, okay? They can help find your parents," I said softly. She gave a timid nod, her small hands clutching my collar for dear life. At the precinct, the desk sergeant, Officer Russo, quickly found a missing person report that matched the girl's description. While we waited, she fell asleep in my arms, her peaceful expression reminding me of my own son, Sam, when he was a baby. "Hope, where the hell have you been, you little brat?" A beefy man with a cruel face stormed into the station, a heavily pregnant woman trailing behind him. The girl jolted awake, trembling violently in my arms. "Are you the ones who reported her missing?" Russo asked. "Yeah, this little curse ran off on her own, made us look all night." The woman snapped, then slapped the girl hard across the face. I was stunned. I instinctively pulled the girl behind me. "What are you doing? You can't hit a child. Mind your own damn business." The man shoved me aside and grabbed the girl's arm. "Let's go home." The little girl burst into tears, clinging to my jacket. "No, mister, save me." "Hold on," I said, blocking their path. "This child has injuries on her. Have you been abusing her?" Russo's expression turned sharp. "We're going to need to look into this." The woman's face changed. She forced a greasy smile. "Officer, don't listen to him. She's a clumsy kid, always falling down. And with another one on the way," she patted her belly, "we've been a little distracted." The man leaned in close to me, his voice low and menacing. "You want to be a hero? You feel so sorry for her. You take her home and raise her. We're having a boy. Anyway, this one's just another mouth to feed." I was shaking with rage. I looked at the little girl's terrified eyes, and a crazy thought flashed through my mind. "Fine, I'll raise her," I heard myself say. "You sign a statement. I'll take custody." The couple exchanged a look of pure, undisguised glee. Russo tried to intervene, but they were already demanding a pen and paper. "Her name's Hope Miller. She's 3.5, healthy as a horse," the woman said quickly, as if afraid I'd change my mind. "You sign this, and she's all yours." My hand trembled as I held the pen. Logic screamed at me. I could barely support my own family. How could I possibly add another child? But then I saw the burn marks on her arm again, and I gritted my teeth and signed my name. The wind howled as I walked out of the precinct, the reality of what I'd just done crashing down on me. What would Sarah say? We couldn't even afford our own son. "Mister," the little girl tugged my hand gently, pointing to a convenience store with a lottery sign in the window. "There." I gave a bitter laugh. "Sorry, kiddo. I don't have any money for lottery tickets." She pulled a crumpled $5 bill from her pocket. "I do. Grandma gave it to me." A lump formed in my throat. I took the money. "Okay, let's go try our luck." Inside, I bought a single $5 scratch-off. I scraped off the first box. Nothing. The second. Nothing. By the time I got to the last line, my breath caught in my chest. $5,000. We won. I scooped up the little girl and spun her around. "You're my little lucky charm." The girl's eyes, for the first time, lit up. A slow smile spread across her lips. It was the first time I'd seen her smile. On the way home, I Venmo'd Sarah the $5,000. Company bonus came through. I texted, "Let's get something nice for dinner." Then I looked at the little girl in my arms and said softly, "From now on, your name is Grace." "Gracie, you're our family's treasure, okay?" Gracie wrapped her arms tightly around my neck and buried her face in my shoulder. I felt a warm dampness spread across my shirt. She was crying. "It's okay now, Gracie," I whispered, patting her back, my own heart heavy with dread. "Daddy's here. No one will ever hurt you again." Would Sarah accept this? Could we really give her a home? I stood in front of our apartment door, the key in the lock, my hand frozen. The winning scratch-off in my pocket felt like a hot coal against my thigh. $5,000 would solve our immediate problems. But how was I going to explain a whole new child? Gracie must have sensed my hesitation. Her tiny hand reached up and patted my cheek. "Daddy Cole." That single word, "Daddy," sent a pang through my chest. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. "What took you so long?" Sarah poked her head out of the kitchen, a smudge of flour on her cheek. When she saw the child in my arms, the rolling pin in her hand clattered to the floor. "Who? Whose child is that?" I opened my mouth, but the speech I'd prepared vanished completely. Gracie shrank into my arms, her grimy little hands clutching my collar. I found her. On the street." "You found her?" Sarah's voice shot up an octave. "Frank, are you insane? Do you have any idea what our situation is? Sam's therapy bills are overdue, and you just bring home a stray? The company paid a bonus." I fumbled for my phone, showing her the Venmo notification. $5,000. It's enough for rent and Sam's tuition. Sarah froze, her gaze shifting between me and Gracie. I looked at the dark circles under her eyes and her chapped hands, and a wave of guilt washed over me. Let's get her cleaned up," she finally sighed, reaching for Gracie. But Gracie clung to my neck, refusing to let go, her body shaking like a leaf in the wind. "It's okay, Gracie," I cooed. "This is Mommy. She'll be really nice to you." Sarah visibly stiffened at the word Mommy, but she quickly softened her expression. "Come on, sweetie. How about Aunt Sarah give you a nice warm bath? And then we can have some yummy food." Perhaps it was the gentleness in her voice, but Gracie slowly loosened her grip. The moment Sarah took her, I saw the shock in my wife's eyes. The girl was impossibly light for a 3.5-year-old. The bathroom door closed. I collapsed onto the sofa, only then noticing my son, Sam, sitting quietly in the corner, meticulously arranging his building blocks. Our 6-year-old was completely oblivious to the chaos, lost in his own world. Since his autism diagnosis at 3, he rarely interacted with anyone, hardly ever even saying daddy or mommy. The water stopped. Sarah emerged from the bathroom carrying a clean Gracie, now dressed in a pair of Sam's old pajamas. She looked like a different child. Her damp hair was plastered to her pale face, making her eyes seem even larger. Her body, Sarah's voice trembled. "It's covered in bruises. Cigarette burns marched from a belt. Who would do this to a child?" I didn't speak, just took Gracie from her. She smelled of Sarah's shampoo, and a little color had finally returned to her cheeks. "Her parents?" Sarah asked. "They didn't want her." I briefly explained what happened at the precinct and showed her the crumpled, handwritten agreement. It was a moment of madness. Sarah was silent for a long time, so long I thought she was about to explode. Finally, she just rubbed her temples. "Let's just eat." On the table, Sarah had made something we hadn't seen in a month: barbecue ribs. Since we'd both been laid off, meat had become a luxury. Gracie stared at the platter, her eyes wide, but didn't dare touch her fork. "Go on, eat," Sarah said, placing a rib on her plate. Gracie took a tentative bite, and then huge, silent tears started dropping into her bowl. She ate ravenously, practically inhaling the food as if she was afraid someone would snatch it away. "Slow down, sweetie. It's all for you," Sarah said, her voice softening as she added more food to Gracie's plate. Just then, Sam, who had been silent all evening, suddenly put down his fork. He stared at Gracie for a few seconds, then spoke clear as day. "Sister." Sarah and I both froze. It was the first new word Sam had spoken in 2 years. "Sam, what did you just say?" Sarah's voice shook. "Sister," he repeated, reaching out to touch Gracie's face. Gracie actually smiled and whispered, "Brother." Sarah's tears finally overflowed. She stood up, walked over to me, and threw her arms around both me and Gracie. "Let's keep her. Her name. It's Gracie, right? Grace Taylor. I like it." That night, we made a small bed for Gracie in Sam's room. When I checked on them in the middle of the night, I found them huddled together on Sam's small bed, Gracie's little hand clutching the hem of his pajama shirt. "This child," Sarah whispered, leaning against my shoulder. It's like she was sent to help us. The next morning, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. May I speak to Frank Taylor? The voice was professional. This is Human Resources at Innovatech. We received your application a while back, and a senior engineer position has just opened up. Are you still interested? I was stunned. Innovatech was the biggest tech firm in the city. I'd applied a month ago, but had been rejected. The salary is double what you were making previously, plus project bonuses and stock options. The voice continued. I answered mechanically, my fingers trembling as I hung up. Sarah came out of the kitchen with breakfast. Who was that so early? Innovatech. They wanted to come in for an interview today. Sarah's spoon clattered into her cereal bowl. Just then her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and gasped, covering her mouth. The school district. I got the tenure track position. We stared at each other, then both looked toward the bedroom where Gracie was still sleeping. In just one day, the suffocating cloud of unemployment and debt had lifted. The coincidence was staggering. I'm going to go buy something nice to celebrate. I grabbed my wallet and headed out. At the entrance to our apartment complex, I ran into our neighbor, Mrs. Gable. The 60-something-year-old woman was the building's unofficial intelligence agency. Nothing happened without her knowing about it. Frank, dear, I heard you had a little visitor last night, she asked, her eyes narrowing as she sized me up. Family? A chill went down my spine. I forced a smile. Yeah, my cousin's kid. Just staying with us for a few days. Mrs. Gable gave a long, knowing oh. She added, I just saw the little thing looked a bit ragged. For a moment there, I thought you'd picked up a stray. I mumbled an excuse and hurried away, but I could feel her prying eyes on my back. On the way to the store, I found myself, as if guided by some unseen force, walking past the same convenience store with the lottery sign. When I got home, Sarah had already dressed both kids. Gracie was swimming in Sam's old clothes, but she was clean and beaming. When she saw me, she gave a shy smile. Daddy, that one word melted my heart. I knelt and hugged her. Hey there, Gracie girl. Sarah smiled from the side, but her eyes were troubled. I was checking Gracie over. Besides the bruises, she's severely malnourished. I want to take her to the doctor for a full checkup. I nodded, then remembered something. Hey, how come Sam is so calm today? Usually, any disruption to his routine would send him into a tailspin, but today he was unervingly peaceful, even holding Gracie's hand. Sarah had noticed too. Since last night, he's been following her around. It's like he's decided she's his sister. I finished her sentence. That afternoon, we took the kids to the clinic. The results were better than we'd feared. Besides the malnutrition and old injuries, Gracie was basically healthy. This kid's tough, the old doctor remarked. To go through all that at her age. You be good to her. On the way home, Gracie fell asleep on my shoulder. Sarah was pushing Sam in a stroller when she suddenly said, Frank, do you think this is fate? Sam has never been this close to anyone. I looked at Gracie's sleeping face, and a corner of my heart softened. Maybe this little girl who had crashed into our lives really would change everything. That evening, Sarah put Gracie in a new pair of pajamas that she'd just bought, pink, with little flowers, a proper girl's pajama set. Gracie touched the soft fabric, her eyes shining like stars. Do you like it? Sarah asked gently. Gracie nodded vigorously, then did something that stunned us both. She stood on her tiptoes and planted a kiss on Sarah's cheek. Thank you, Mommy. Sarah's tears came instantly. She hugged Gracie tightly. Oh, sweetie, from now on, you're Mommy's baby. I stood in the doorway, watching the heartwarming scene, feeling both warm and anxious. Fate had given us an unexpected gift, but I had a nagging feeling that this gift came with a price we hadn't yet seen. Outside, under the streetlight, Mrs. Gable's silhouette flickered past our window and was gone. The glass facade of the Innovatech tower gleamed in the sunlight. I stood at the entrance, adjusting the knot on my new tie. A week into the job, and it all still felt like a dream. Morning, Frank. The receptionist greeted me warmly. Mr. Roberts said to send you straight to his office when you arrive. My stomach tightened. Roberts was the VP of engineering, my direct boss. He'd been impressed with my project history during the interview, but a week in, I hadn't produced anything tangible yet. As the elevator ascended, my phone buzzed. It was a picture from Sarah, Gracie, and Sam, sitting side by side in a preschool classroom, both of them smiling brightly. Sam was actually willing to go to school. I never would have thought it possible. Frank, good timing. Roberts looked up from a pile of documents. That oceanic conglomerate project, the client specifically requested you to lead it. I was floored. Me? But I just started. They saw the system architecture from your previous work. They were very impressed. Roberts handed me a contract. This is a huge deal. Do us proud. Oh, and by the way, effective today, your salary is getting a 20% bump. I practically floated out of his office. A 20% raise on top of the already doubled salary? That put my income at more than twice what it was before I got laid off. In the break room, I snuck a call to Sarah. Sarah, they gave me a raise. I whispered, unable to contain my excitement. And they made me a project lead. I heard Sarah gasp on the other end, followed by the sound of her crying with joy. That's wonderful. Frank, I have good news too. The principal assigned me to the advanced placement class. The pay is even better than I expected. After hanging up, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the city, a profound sense of disbelief washing over me. A month ago, I was desperate. Now, Sarah and I both had promising careers. It all started that cold evening I found Gracie. Your coffee, Frank. My assistant, a young guy named Kevin, handed me a steaming latte. Thanks, but I don't remember ordering. Mr. Roberts' orders. Said you like a latte with 2 sugars. Kevin smiled. The company really values you. I took the coffee. The sweetness on my tongue was mixed with a faint taste of unease. It was all happening too easily. It didn't feel real. When I got home that evening, the smell of a home-cooked meal filled the hallway. I opened the door to see Sarah in the kitchen, Gracie and Sam sitting at the dining table, drawing. The table was laden with pork chops, steamed fish, and roasted vegetables, a feast by our recent standards. Daddy! Gracie leaped from her chair and ran into my arms. She was wearing a pink dress, her hair in 2 little pigtails. She was a world away from the child I'd first met. Sam looked up too, the corner of his mouth twitching upwards, his version of a happy smile. I knelt and hugged both of them. How was your day? I asked Gracie. The teacher praised me, she said excitedly. I recited a whole poem, and the whole class clapped. Then she pointed at Sam, and brother drew a picture of me and him. I looked at the drawing in front of Sam. On it were 2 wobbly stick figures holding hands. My eyes suddenly felt hot. It was the first time Sam had ever drawn people. Before, it was only meaningless lines. Sarah came out of the kitchen with a bowl of soup, a smile she couldn't hide on her face. Sam played with another kid at school today, and he said, "Thank you." After dinner, the 4 of us went for a walk around the block. Gracie skipped ahead, and for once, Sam didn't resist going outside, quietly holding my hand. Sarah linked her arm through mine, telling me about her day at school. Sarah, a voice called out from behind us. It was Mrs. Davis, a teacher from Sarah's school who lived in our complex. The principal asked me to tell you, you've been selected to represent the school at the district's teaching competition next Monday. Sarah's eyes widened. Me? But I'm brand new. He said he was impressed by your innovative lesson plans, Mrs. Davis said with a smile, her gaze landing on Gracie. Is this the little girl you adopted? She's adorable. Gracie hid shyly behind my legs. Mrs. Davis knelt and pulled a lollipop from her purse. Here you go, sweetie. On the way home, Sarah was lost in thought. Frank, have you noticed? Ever since Gracie came, it's just been one good thing after another. I nodded, that same unease creeping back. Fate doesn't hand out favors for free. I worried there was a price we hadn't yet seen. Over the weekend, we went to the courthouse to start the formal adoption process. Officer Russo, who we'd called for advice, looked over the paperwork, his brow furrowed. Frank, he said, lowering his voice, this kid's birth parents. They're not good people. You sure you want to go through with this? I nodded firmly. Gracie is part of our family now. Russo sighed and handed me a stack of forms. Fill these out, get a home study done, and then wait for the judge's approval. He paused. Someone's been asking around about the kid. You guys be careful. His words sent a chill down my spine. On the way home, I kept looking over my shoulder, feeling like we were being watched. Sarah noticed my anxiety. What's wrong? Nothing, I said, not wanting to worry her. But I made a mental note to be extra vigilant when picking up the kids. Monday morning, I just got into the office when I got a call from the town manager of my old hometown. Frank, great news. His booming voice rattled my eardrum. The old neighborhood is being redeveloped for the new tech park. Your family's old house and land are part of the eminent domain buyout. The compensation is at least $500,000. I almost dropped my phone. $500,000? That would pay off all our debts and let us buy a new house. When do we get the money? My voice trembled. If the paperwork moves fast, next month, the manager said. You'll need to come back and sign some papers. After hanging up, I immediately texted Sarah. She replied with a string of exclamation points, then said she had big news to tell me that night. When I got home, Sarah had cooked another feast. Gracie and Sam were dressed in new clothes, like we were celebrating something. What's the special occasion? I asked with a smile. Sarah pulled me to a seat, her face flushed. Frank, I'm pregnant. The fork fell from my hand. Pregnant? We already had Sam and Gracie, and now another. The doctor said I'm 6 weeks along, Sarah said, biting her lip. It happened right around the time Gracie came to us. My mind went blank. The buyout money, Sarah's pregnancy, our careers taking off. All within a month of Gracie's arrival. It was too much of a coincidence. It was scary. You're not happy? Sarah's eyes clouded with worry. Of course I'm happy. I quickly took her hand. It's all happening so fast. The buyout, the baby, my promotion. Sarah relaxed and smiled. Maybe Gracie really is our little lucky star. After dinner, we took the kids to a nearby park. Gracie and Sam were playing on the jungle gym while Sarah and I watched from a bench. Frank, look! Sarah suddenly pointed. Hasn't that man been watching us? I followed her gaze. A disheveled man was standing in the shadows of a tree, staring intently at Gracie. My blood ran cold. It was her birth father, Daryl. Get the kids and go home, I said in a low voice. Now! Sarah immediately understood, her face turning white. She hurried to the playground, scooped up Gracie, and took Sam's hand, walking quickly toward home. I followed close behind, my eyes scanning our surroundings. Back in our apartment with the door locked, I finally let out a breath. Sarah held Gracie, her voice trembling. Was that them? Gracie's? I nodded. The man, yes. I didn't see the woman. Gracie seemed to sense something was wrong, burying her face in Sarah's shoulder. Mommy, I'm scared. It's okay, baby, Sarah whispered, stroking her back. Mommy and Daddy will protect you. That night, we double-checked all the locks. Before bed, I got a call from Officer Russo. Frank, I did some digging, he said, his voice grim. That couple has been asking for your address. It seems they're in trouble. The son they just had was born with a birth defect. Needs a lot of money for medical care. My heart sank. They want Gracie back. I think it's more than that. Russo sighed. They've been telling everyone that Gracie is some kind of lucky charm, that whoever raises her gets rich. Now that they know you've had a sudden turnaround, I'm afraid. After the call, I smoked a cigarette on the balcony. The night wind couldn't blow away the dread in my heart. Gracie had brought us good fortune, but she had also attracted a storm of greed. When I went back inside, Sarah had put the kids to bed. She leaned against me and asked softly, "What are we going to do?" "Starting tomorrow, I'll handle school drop-offs and pickups," I said, holding her tight. "And don't tell anyone about the pregnancy. The fewer people who know, the better." Sarah nodded, then managed a small smile. It's strange, you know. Sam never used to let anyone touch his toys, but today he shared them with Gracie. His therapist said his progress is a miracle. I looked at the two sleeping children. Sam's little hand was clutching Gracie's pajama shirt, as if afraid she would disappear. The boy who had been locked in his own world now had someone he wanted to protect. "Sarah, no matter what happens, we have to protect Gracie," I whispered. "She's our daughter now." Sarah leaned into my arms, our fingers intertwined. Outside, the moon hung high in the sky, casting a cold silver light. We didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for now, our family of 4, soon to be 5, was together, and that was enough. I couldn't sleep. The appearance of Gracie's birth parents was a dark cloud over our newly sunny skies. I got up and walked to the kids' room. Gracie stirred in her sleep, her hand reaching out for something. Sam immediately shifted closer, letting her grab onto his finger. The tender scene made my eyes well up. Fortune and misfortune are two sides of the same coin. The old saying echoed in my head. What kind of trial was hidden behind the blessing Gracie had brought us? Gracie's answer was just wonderful. The preschool teacher beamed, patting Gracie on the head. Let's all give Gracie a round of applause. The classroom erupted in applause. I stood outside the window, watching Gracie stand up straight, her face glowing with a confident smile. The little girl who'd been shivering by a dumpster 3 months ago was a completely different person. "Mr. Taylor, you're here," the teacher, Ms. Albright, said as she stepped outside. "Gracie got another gold star today. She's a model student in our class." I smiled and nodded. "Thank you for all your hard work." "It's all Gracie. She's a very bright girl," Ms. Albright said, then lowered her voice. "But what's even more amazing is Sam. Last week he actually raised his hand to answer a question. His language skills are progressing at an incredible rate. His therapist calls it a miracle." I finished for her. The word had been popping up a lot lately. Sam's recovery was a miracle. My career jump was a miracle. Even Sarah winning first place in the district teaching competition was being called a miracle. "Daddy!" Gracie burst out of the classroom and into my arms. She clutched her gold star in her hand, eager to show me. "That's my girl." I lifted her and spun her around. "Mommy's making your favorite Coca-Cola chicken wings. Let's go get your brother." Sam was in a special education classroom in the same building. Picking him up used to be a battle. He resisted change, refused to leave his familiar space. But since Gracie's arrival, things had gotten much easier. Brother. Gracie ran into his classroom. Look, I got another gold star today. Sam put down his building blocks and slowly looked up. The sunlight streamed through the window, and I saw his lips curve into a slight smile, his way of showing happiness. Sister. Good, he said, one word at a time, and then he voluntarily took Gracie's hand. His teacher, Mrs. Peters, looked so surprised her glasses nearly fell off her nose. Mr. Taylor. Sam spoke a three-word phrase today. Last week he was still struggling with single words. On the way home, holding a child in each hand, my heart was full. Sam no longer resisted being in public. He even seemed curious about the people passing by. Gracie chattered like a happy little bird. Daddy, the teacher said there's a family field day next week. You have to come with me and brother. Of course, I said, ruffling her hair. Mommy can't do any running with a new baby in her belly, but the three of us will make a great team. Gracie suddenly stopped and looked up at me, her expression serious. Daddy, when a new baby is born, will you and Mommy still love me and brother? The question was a needle to my heart. I knelt and pulled both of them into a hug. Gracie, you and Sam will always be Mommy and Daddy's babies. Love isn't like a cake that gets smaller when you share it. It's more like a fire. The more people you add, the bigger and warmer it gets. Gracie nodded, as if she understood, the worry in her eyes fading. Sam reached out and awkwardly patted her head. Sister, no cry. Back home, Sarah was resting on the couch, looking a little pale. At 3 months pregnant, her morning sickness was much worse than it had been with Sam. Mommy. Gracie immediately let go of my hand and ran to Sarah's side. Are you not feeling well? I can rub your head. Sarah gave a weak smile. I'm okay, sweetie. Just a little nauseous. But Gracie had already scrambled onto the couch behind her, using her little hands to gently massage Sarah's temples. She looked like a serious little grown-up. Better, Mommy? Gracie whispered. Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Much better. Gracie, you're amazing. I watched them, a lump forming in my throat. Gracie was only 4, but she already knew how to take care of people. What kind of life had she lived to become so mature so quickly? The buyout money came through, Sarah said suddenly, her eyes still closed. $508,000. The town manager called and said you just need to go sign the final papers tomorrow. I stood frozen. $500,000. That money would change our lives completely. I'll go first thing in the morning, I said, sitting beside her and taking her hand. We can get a bigger house, give the kids a better environment. Sarah opened her eyes, her gaze sweeping over our small living room. We definitely need to. Once the baby comes, this place will be too crowded. After dinner, we celebrated with a rare bottle of wine. Sarah had juice, of course. With the kids asleep, we sat on the balcony, enjoying the quiet. Frank, Sarah began hesitantly, don't you think? All of this is a little too perfect. I knew what she meant. The days of unemployment and debt felt like yesterday. Yet here we were with stable, high-paying jobs, $500,000 on the way, a recovering son, and a new baby coming. It was all too good to be true. Maybe. I sipped my wine. This is what people call a lucky break. Sarah looked towards the bedroom. It's Gracie. She brought it. I didn't answer. My rational mind told me it was all a series of coincidences. But deep down, I was starting to believe that Gracie did possess some kind of special luck. The next morning, I drove out to my old hometown. The paperwork was straightforward, and the money was wired to my account. On the way back, I stopped at a few new housing developments. This one's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, great light, and the community has a bilingual preschool and is zoned for a top-rated elementary school, the sales agent said enthusiastically. And there's a 5% discount if you buy this month. I stood at the model home's large window, imagining the kids running and playing here. Sunlight filled every room. No dark corners, no smell of dampness. This was what a home should feel like. I'll take it, I said, pulling out my bank card. On the drive back, the radio announced the winning lottery numbers. I was suddenly reminded of that evening that changed everything, when Gracie had insisted I buy that scratch-off ticket. The $5,000 had been a lifeline, but what had truly changed our fate was the unexplainable good fortune that followed her. It was evening when I got home. As I stepped out of the elevator, I heard shouting from inside our apartment. My heart sank, and I rushed to the door. What gives you the right to barge into my home? It was Sarah's voice, sharp with anger. Shut up. We're here to get our daughter back, a man's rough voice yelled. I threw the door open. The scene inside made my blood boil. Gracie's birth parents were standing in our living room. The man, Daryl, was pointing a finger in Sarah's face while the woman, Brenda, scanned the room as if looking for Gracie. Sarah stood protectively in front of the two children, her face pale, but her eyes defiant. "What are you doing here?" I yelled, stepping in front of my family. Daryl sneered. "Well, look who it is. The foster daddy. Good, you're here. Give us back our little good luck charm." "What good luck charm?" I fought to control my rage. "Gracie is our daughter. We have a legally binding custody agreement." "That paper's bullshit," his wife, Brenda, shrieked. "We talked to a lawyer. A private agreement that isn't registered with the court is invalid." My heart skipped a beat. Officer Russo had mentioned we needed to finalize things, but with all the good news, I'd let it slide. "Gracie was abused in your care. We have a right to protect her," Sarah said calmly, though I could feel her trembling. "Don't you dare accuse us." Brenda suddenly threw a stack of photos onto the coffee table. "Look, we gave her the best of everything. Gold jewelry, fancy food. How was she mistreated?" I glanced at the photos and felt a pang of disgust. Gracie was in pretty dresses, smiling brightly. But the smiles were clearly posed, her eyes empty of joy, and the photos all looked brand new, as if they'd been taken recently. "Staged photos?" I sneered. "Gracie has been with us for 3 months. Why are you only looking for her now?" Daryl's eyes darted away. We were busy. Now we're taking our daughter to the big city to live a better life." "Is that so?" Sarah cut in. "Or is it because your newborn son needs a massive amount of money for surgery?" That hit a nerve. Brenda's face contorted with rage as she lunged at Sarah. "You bitch. You're cursing my son." I blocked her path. "Get out, or I'm calling the police." "Go ahead." Daryl grinned maliciously. "The cops can come and see who's right. We're her biological parents." Just then, Gracie, who had been hiding behind Sarah, ran out, her face red with anger. "I'm not going with you. You hit me. You burned me. My name is Grace Taylor, not Hope Miller." Daryl's face darkened, and he reached for her. "You little brat, who taught you to talk back?" I stepped in front of Gracie. "You touch her, I dare you." In the standoff, Sam let out a piercing scream, his reaction to extreme distress. Gracie immediately turned and hugged him. "It's okay, brother. Sister's here." The tender moment seemed to infuriate Brenda. She said in a sing-song, venomous voice, "Oh, look at them. So sweet. Too bad she's a Miller. You can't keep her." I pulled the custody agreement from a drawer. "It's in black and white. You voluntarily gave up your parental rights. You want to go to court? Bring it on." Daryl stared at the paper, a flicker of panic in his eyes. He clearly hadn't expected us to have kept it. "You just wait," he said finally, his voice dripping with malice. "We'll find a way. The law isn't on your side." After they slammed the door, Sarah collapsed onto the sofa, her face ashen. I rushed to her side. "Are you okay? Do you need to go to the hospital?" "I'm fine." She shook her head weakly, pulling Gracie into her arms. "Don't be scared, baby. Mommy and Daddy will protect you." Gracie was surprisingly calm. She just asked in a small voice, "Mommy, will they come back?" Sarah and I looked at each other, unable to answer immediately. Daryl and Brenda wouldn't give up easily, especially now that they were desperate for money. "Don't worry," I finally said. "Tomorrow, Daddy will go and file the official adoption papers. No one can take you away from us." That night, our whole family slept in one bed. Gracie was between me and Sarah, and Sam was pressed up against her. In the middle of the night, I woke to find Gracie staring at me with wide eyes. "Why aren't you sleeping, sweetie?" I whispered. "Daddy," her voice was barely audible. "Am I really a lucky charm? Grandma used to say it, that whoever raised me would get rich, but it would bring bad luck to my own family." Her voice trembled. "I don't want to bring bad luck to you and Mommy and brother." "That's nonsense." I pulled her into a hug. "Gracie is just Gracie, Mommy and Daddy's precious daughter. Our family is doing well because we're good, hard-working people. It has nothing to do with you, understand?" Gracie nodded, but the worry in her eyes didn't completely disappear. I patted her back until she fell asleep again. Moonlight streamed through the curtains, illuminating her peaceful face. I gently stroked her hair, my mind a turmoil of emotions. Daryl and Brenda's appearance had torn open Gracie's barely healed wounds and cast a shadow over our quiet life. But tomorrow was another day. I looked out at the starry sky and made a silent vow. No matter what, I would protect this family. I would protect my wife and my children. Gracie was an inseparable part of the Taylor family, and no one was going to take her away. At dawn, the first rays of sun lit up the room. I saw Gracie was already awake, kneeling by the window, looking down at the garden below. Hearing me stir, she turned, her face breaking into a brilliant smile. "Daddy, look." She pointed outside. "There's a rainbow." I walked over. Sure enough, a small, perfect rainbow arched over the dew-covered flowers. Gracie stood in the sunlight, practically glowing. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty, no matter how many storms lay ahead, as long as our family was together, we would always find the rainbow. And the award for this year's Tech Innovation of the Year goes to Frank Taylor and his team. The applause was thunderous, the camera flashes blinding. I stood on the stage, holding the crystal trophy, looking out at the sea of faces in the audience, feeling like I was in a dream. 3 months ago, the smart home system my team developed had not only launched successfully, but had also caught the eye of the mayor's office for its Smart City initiative. Tonight's awards ceremony brought together the city's tech elite. Frank, a few words? The host asked, handing me the microphone. I cleared my throat. This project wouldn't have been possible without the hard work of every single person on my team. My eyes scanned the audience and suddenly locked on a familiar figure in the back row, Daryl. He was wearing an ill-fitting suit, his eyes fixed on me with a venomous glare. My voice faltered for a second, but I quickly recovered and finished my brief acceptance speech. The moment I stepped off stage, I texted Sarah. Saw Daryl at the event. Be careful. She replied instantly. Don't worry. My mom is here with the kids. Gracie and I are at a school event. Totally safe. I breathed a sigh of relief. It had been 2 months since Daryl and Brenda had stormed our apartment. In that time, we'd rushed through the official adoption for Gracie and moved into our new 4-bedroom house. I'd hoped that was the end of it, but they were like ghosts that wouldn't be exorcised. Frank, congratulations. My boss, Mr. Roberts, walked over with a glass of champagne. The CEO of Oceanic is raving about you. He wants you for their next big project, too. I managed a weak smile. Thanks for the opportunity, Mr. Roberts. By the way, he lowered his voice. The board has decided to promote you to Director of Engineering. It'll be announced next week. Your salary will double again, plus you'll get a significant stock package. The news momentarily overshadowed the anxiety Daryl's presence had caused. Director of Engineering. It was the pinnacle of my career. A year ago, I was on the brink of losing everything, and now, outside the venue, the early summer sun felt warm on my face. I took a deep breath and decided to head to the school to pick up Sarah and Gracie. It was Gracie's kindergarten talent show, and Sarah had taken the afternoon off to be there. The school was decorated with balloons and streamers. When I entered the auditorium, the show was already underway. A group of kids was on stage dancing, and I spotted Gracie immediately. She was in a pink tutu in the front row, her movements more graceful and precise than anyone else's. Sarah sat in the audience, cradling our newborn daughter, Belle, in her arms. I slipped into the seat beside her. When did you get here? She whispered. Did you win? I nodded, showing her the trophy. And I got promoted. Director. Salary doubled. Sarah's eyes lit up, and she leaned over to kiss me. That's amazing. I have good news, too. I was just named District Teacher of the Year. We grinned at each other. For the past 6 months, it had been one piece of good news after another. Sometimes I was afraid I'd wake up and find it was all a dream. On stage, Gracie's dance ended. She curtsied perfectly, her eyes scanning the crowd. When she saw me, her face brightened and she waved enthusiastically. Amid the applause, the host announced, our next performance is a poetry reading of My Home by Grace Taylor. Gracie stood alone in the center of the stage, the spotlight making her little face shine. My home has a daddy, a mommy, a brother, and a sister. Her clear, childish voice filled the auditorium. My daddy is so smart, my mommy is so gentle, my brother protects me, and I take care of my sister. My eyes started to burn. Gracie must have written the poem herself. It was simple, but so full of genuine emotion. I saw other parents in the audience dabbing their eyes. I love my home, because everyone here loves me. Gracie's voice cracked for a moment, but then she continued, her tone firm. I'm not Hope. I'm Grace Taylor, the Taylor family's treasure. That line was a dagger. She was declaring her identity, sending a message to Daryl and Brenda, who could have been lurking anywhere. After the show, Gracie ran off the stage and into my arms. Daddy, did you see me? I saw you, sweetie. You were fantastic. I lifted her and spun her around. Daddy is so proud of you. Sarah came over, and the 4 of us hugged in a corner of the auditorium, a small, warm world of our own. On the drive home, Gracie held her baby sister, Belle, humming a little song to her. The baby was unusually calm in her sister's arms, her big eyes looking up at Gracie with curiosity. Mommy, she's smiling at me. Gracie exclaimed. Sarah and I exchanged a smile. Belle really was an angel baby, hardly ever crying. And Gracie was a natural helper, already learning to change diapers and mix formula. By the way, Sarah said suddenly, Sam spoke up at school today. Really? What did he say? I asked eagerly. Sam had been successfully mainstreamed into a regular elementary school last month, another miracle we hadn't expected. His teacher said another boy tried to snatch the cookie Gracie had packed for him, and Sam pushed the boy away and said, "Don't bully my sister." Sarah's voice was filled with pride. A full sentence, and it was to protect his sister. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. A year ago, Sam was a nonverbal child with autism. Now he was defending his sister. His doctors called it a medical anomaly. When we got home, my mother-in-law had dinner ready. Sam was at the table, a small wooden house he and Gracie had built in front of him. 4 little stick figures stood at the door, representing our family. "Daddy, look." Sam eagerly showed me his work. His words were still few, but his eye contact was nearly that of a typical child. After dinner, my mother-in-law pulled me aside onto the balcony. "Frank, there's some gossip going around the neighborhood." My stomach dropped. "What kind of gossip?" "Some people are saying your family's sudden wealth is from some kind of black magic," she said, frowning. "They're saying you adopted Gracie to borrow her luck, that she's some kind of lucky charm." My temples throbbed with anger. It's Daryl and Brenda spreading those rumors. "Not just them," my mother-in-law whispered. "That Mrs. Gable has been telling everyone that Gracie has a shady past, that there's something fishy about your sudden good fortune." "Mrs. Gable? The gossip queen?" I remembered seeing her lurking around our building lately, always trying to talk to Gracie. "Mom, please be extra careful with the kids," I said seriously, "especially when you're picking them up from school." She nodded. "Don't you worry. By the way, what are the plans for Belle's christening?" "Just something simple," I said, looking into the living room of my happy family. "Just close family and friends." That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Sarah was asleep, holding our newborn daughter. I quietly got up and stood in the doorway of the kids' room. Gracie and Sam were in their own little beds, moonlight filtering through the curtains and landing on Gracie's peaceful face. I tiptoed in and tucked her in. "Daddy," she mumbled, her eyes fluttering open. "Go back to sleep, sweetie," I whispered, kissing her forehead. "Daddy's here." Gracie closed her eyes, satisfied, but her little hand reached out and grabbed my finger. At that moment, I made a vow. I would protect this family and my children, no matter the cost. The next day was Saturday. I slept in for once. When I woke up, Sarah had already taken the 3 kids to a music class. Yes, even Sam was now willing to participate in group activities. A note on the table next to my breakfast read, "Won't be back for lunch, taking the kids to mom's." As I was eating, my phone rang. It was Officer Russo. "Frank, something you should know," he said gravely. "Daryl and Brenda have been asking for your new address." My heart sank. "What do they want?" "Not sure, but I heard their son's condition has worsened. They need a lot of money for his surgery." Russo sighed. "They're telling everyone Gracie is a lucky charm. I'm worried they might try something to get to her." After the call, I stood on the balcony, looking down on our new neighborhood. The sun was shining, kids were playing, seniors were chatting on benches. But beneath the peaceful surface, an undercurrent of trouble was stirring. That afternoon, Sarah and the kids came home. Gracie ran to me as soon as she was through the door. "Daddy, we learned a new song. I'll sing it for you." Her sweet voice filled the living room. Sam awkwardly clapped along, and even baby Belle cooed in her cradle. Sarah leaned against my shoulder, her face radiating happiness. The warmth of the moment made me forget all my worries. No matter what storms were brewing outside, this home was my sanctuary. That night, we ordered a hot pot delivery to celebrate all our recent good news. As the broth bubbled, Gracie took charge of adding the ingredients, her face flushed from the steam. First the meat, then the vegetables. She chanted all business. Sam suddenly spoke up. "Sister, careful." "Ha!" Sarah and I froze. It was the most complex sentence Sam had ever constructed on his own. Gracie beamed. "Thanks, brother." She picked up a cooked slice of beef and put it in his bowl. "Your favorite." Watching them, my eyes welled up again. After dinner, we all snuggled on the couch to watch a movie. With Gracie on my left, Sam on my right, and Sarah beside me holding Belle, we watched The Lion King. When the classic scene came where Rafiki holds up Simba, Gracie suddenly said, "Daddy, hold me up like that." I laughed and lifted her over my head. Just like in a movie, Gracie giggled, her hands reaching for the ceiling. "I'm Grace Taylor, the Taylor family's treasure." Sam, for once, laughed out loud, raising his own hands in imitation of his sister. Sarah held Belle, tears of joy shining in her eyes. I wished I could freeze time in that perfect moment, but I knew a storm was coming. Daryl and Brenda wouldn't give up. Mrs. Gable's gossip was just the beginning. I had to be ready to protect this happiness we had fought so hard for. Late that night, after the kids were asleep, I opened my laptop and organized all our legal documents related to Gracie's adoption. I also texted Officer Russo, asking for advice on extra security measures. Outside, the moon was high and bright. Tomorrow was Belle's christening, a day that should have been purely joyful. But my gut told me Daryl and Brenda would use it as an opportunity to get close to Gracie. I tiptoed into the kids' room. All three were sound asleep. Gracie was clutching a small teddy bear Belle had been gifted for her, and Sam was no longer curled into his defensive ball, but sleeping soundly on his back. Belle's christening was held at a nice reception hall downtown. I stood at the entrance greeting guests. Our little girl dressed in a lacy white gown, looking like a delicate porcelain doll. Sarah was inside, arranging seating, while Gracie and Sam, in matching sibling outfits, stuck close to their grandmother. "Frank, congratulations." My colleague, Dave, came over with a gift, cooing at Belle. "She's beautiful, just like her mom." "Thanks," I replied with a smile, but my eyes were constantly scanning the room. Daryl and Brenda had been quiet for 2 weeks, and the silence was making me more anxious than their threats. The hall was filled with friends and family. Gracie, as the big sister, was helping Sarah direct guests and hand out party favors to the other children. Sam, though still quiet, was no longer hiding, sitting calmly by his grandmother and solving a Rubik's Cube. "Mr. Taylor," a woman's voice came from behind me. I turned to see a middle-aged woman with black-rimmed glasses holding a gift box. "I'm sorry," I asked, confused. "I'm a new school psychologist at Northwood Elementary, Dr. Evans," she said with a smile, handing me the gift. "I heard your daughter Grace used to attend our preschool. I just wanted to come by and offer my congratulations." I politely took the gift. "Thank you, Dr. Evans. Gracie's in 1st grade now." "I know." Her eyes drifted past me, fixing on Gracie across the room. "She's a very special child, isn't she?" The way she said it sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't a compliment, it was a probe. "Every child is special," I replied coolly, then excused myself to greet other guests, carrying Belle away with me. As the party went on, I noticed Dr. Evans talking to Gracie for a long time, occasionally taking pictures with her phone. I shot Sarah a look. She immediately understood and went over to lead Gracie away. "Frank," my father-in-law came over and whispered, "that woman was just asking about your family, especially about how you came to adopt Gracie." I clenched my fists. Something was definitely wrong. I took out my phone, discreetly snapped a picture of Dr. Evans, and sent it to Officer Russo, asking him to run a check. During the cake cutting, Gracie, as the big sister, was supposed to help blow out the candle on Belle's small cake. But in the midst of the applause, she just stared at the flame, lost in thought. "Gracie," Sarah prompted gently. Gracie snapped out of it, forced a smile, and blew out the candle. But I saw that the light didn't reach her eyes. On the drive home, she was unusually quiet. "Are you tired, sweetie?" Sarah asked, feeling her forehead. Gracie shook her head, pressing her face against the window and watching the world fly by in silence. That night, after putting the kids to bed, Sarah and I sat on the balcony. "That Dr. Evans is definitely a problem," I said. Russo texted back. "Northwood Elementary has no psychologist named Evans." Sarah's face paled. "You think Daryl sent her?" "It's likely," I said, sipping my tea. "Starting tomorrow, we need to be even more careful with the kids." Sarah nodded, then said, "Frank, Gracie's been acting strange. Yesterday, I found her packing her little backpack with clothes and snacks. I asked her what she was doing, and she said she was afraid she'd bring us bad luck." My heart twisted. Who's been telling her things like that? "I don't know." Sarah's eyes turned red. "That child is too perceptive for her own good. It breaks my heart." The next morning, I drove Gracie and Sam to school. Gracie kept her head down, fiddling with her fingers. "Gracie," I asked softly, "is there anything you want to tell Daddy?" She shook her head, but her eyes welled up with tears. I pulled over, knelt to her level, and looked her in the eye. "Sweetheart, remember, you can tell Mommy and Daddy anything. We will always love you, no matter what." Her tears spilled over. "Daddy, am I going to bring bad luck to people?" "Of course not." I pulled her into a fierce hug. "Who told you that?" "Yesterday. That lady at the party said." Gracie sobbed. "She said I was a jinx. That when my birth parents had me, they were poor and miserable, and now that they have a new baby, he's sick. She said it's because I gave all my good luck to you, and that's why they have bad luck." I was shaking with fury, but I forced my voice to be calm for Gracie. "That is absolute nonsense. Gracie is our family's lucky star, not because of some magic, but because you're a kind, wonderful, and smart little girl." Gracie nodded, but the cloud of doubt didn't leave her eyes. After dropping them off, I drove straight to the precinct. "We found her," Russo said, handing me a file. "The woman is Daryl's cousin, Lisa Miller. She took a lot of pictures of Gracie yesterday. I think they're planning to use them to build a case." "What kind of case?" Russo sighed. "Daryl's son needs a liver transplant. It's going to cost at least $100,000. They're planning to sue you for illegal adoption. They either want the kid back or they want to extort you. I scoffed. We have legal adoption papers. You do, but they can claim they were coerced into signing, Russo said grimly. And what's worse, they've gotten your old neighbor, Mrs. Gable, to be a false witness. Mrs. Gable? The woman who gossiped about everyone? I remembered her lurking around, trying to get close to Gracie. I went to work, but couldn't focus. At 3 o'clock, I left early to pick up the kids. Outside the school, I saw a familiar figure, Mrs. Gable. She was talking to Gracie, who was shaking her head and backing away. I rushed over. Gracie, I called out. She saw me and immediately ran to hide behind my legs. Mrs. Gable put on a sickly sweet smile. Oh, Frank, picking up the kids so early? I was just telling Gracie how cute she is. Mrs. Gable, I said, my voice ice cold, please stay away from my children. At home, Gracie wouldn't let go of my hand. Sarah saw her distress and asked gently, What's wrong, sweetie? Gracie burst into tears. Mommy, Mrs. Gable said. She said if I don't go back to my birth parents, they'll die. She said the baby's sickness is all my fault. Sarah's face went white with rage. She pulled Gracie into a hug. Don't listen to her. That's not true. After calming Gracie down, Sarah and I spoke in hushed tones in the kitchen. This is psychological warfare. I gritted out. They're trying to scare Gracie to get what they want. Sarah wiped her eyes. She's been having nightmares. Last night she was talking in her sleep, saying, Don't take me back. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. This wasn't just harassment anymore. It was severe emotional abuse. At dinner, Gracie barely ate. Even Sam noticed his sister's mood and put his favorite piece of chicken on her plate. Sister, eat, he said, his voice clumsy but full of care. Gracie managed a weak smile and took a small bite, but the sparkle in her eyes was gone. That night, I sat on her bed and gently stroked her hair. Gracie, tell Daddy what's on your mind. She bit her lip, then whispered, Daddy, what if I really am a jinx? What if I bring you bad luck? The pain in my chest was sharp. Sweetheart, listen to me. There's no such thing as a jinx. Your birth parents' problems are their own fault, not yours. But tears filled her big eyes. Mrs. Gable said that since I came to live with you, everything got better for our family and my birth parents' lives got worse. That's because we are kind, hardworking people, I said firmly, and they are lazy and greedy. It has nothing to do with you, do you understand? Gracie nodded, but I knew she wasn't convinced. A 4-year-old shouldn't have to carry this burden. Sarah came in with a glass of warm milk. Drink this, sweetie, and get some sleep. Remember, no matter what happens, Mommy and Daddy will protect you. Gracie drank the milk and lay down, then asked quietly, Mommy, if I wasn't a lucky star, would you still love me? Sarah's tears spilled over. Silly girl, we don't love you because of some good luck. We love you because you are you, our precious daughter. Gracie finally smiled, a real smile, and closed her eyes. Sarah and I stayed until she was sound asleep. Back in our room, Sarah leaned on my shoulder, crying silently. Frank, what are we going to do? They are hurting our child. I held her close. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with our lawyer to reinforce the adoption, and I'm thinking about transferring Gracie to a new school. Sarah looked up. Transfer her? But she loves her school, and Sam is there. I know, I sighed, but safety comes first. If that Lisa woman could get into the christening, she could get into the school. The next day was Saturday, so we took the kids to an amusement park. On the carousel, Gracie finally showed a genuine smile. And with his sister's encouragement, Sam even tried the little train ride. While we were eating lunch at a restaurant, my phone rang. It was Officer Russo. Frank, he said, his voice serious, Daryl and Brenda have officially filed a lawsuit against you. They're suing for illegal adoption and demanding custody. My blood ran cold. When? This morning. They've also contacted the media. They try to spin a story about you stealing their child. Russo sighed, and it gets worse. Mrs. Gable has agreed to testify that she witnessed you coercing them into signing the agreement. My hand holding the phone was shaking. That's a complete lie. I hung up and forced myself to stay calm. Sarah gave me a questioning look, but I shook my head, signaling we'd talk later. But Gracie seemed to sense something. Daddy, did something happen? Nothing, sweetie. I forced a smile. Are you done eating? Want to go on another ride? On the way home, Gracie was silent again. That night, after the kids were asleep, Sarah and I had an emergency video call with our lawyer. The situation isn't great, mister, Davies said, adjusting his glasses. While your adoption is legally filed, they are now claiming they signed under duress, and they have a witness. We have proof that Gracie was abused at their home. Sarah said, her voice rising. That's the problem, our lawyer sighed. The photos of her injuries were taken after she came to you. You can't prove they existed before the adoption. Unless what? Unless you can find direct proof of the abuse, or prove that their witness is lying. After the call, Sarah and I sat in silence. The moon cast a cold, frosty light on the floor. Suddenly, Sarah said, "Frank, I have an idea. Mrs. Gable is their key witness, right? What if we can prove she's lying?" "How?" "I remember." Sarah thought for a moment. "When Gracie first came here, Mrs. Gable came over a lot. She kept saying what a good deed we were doing. If we could find a recording of her saying that." My eyes lit up. The building's security cameras. The management office keeps footage for 3 months. We can check what Mrs. Gable was saying back then. A sliver of hope ignited in my chest. I looked at the clock. It was 1 in the morning. First thing tomorrow, I would go to the management office and check those tapes. I would do whatever it took to protect my family, to protect my children. I tiptoed into the kids' room. All 3 were asleep. Gracie was clutching the little teddy bear, but her brow was furrowed, as if she couldn't find peace even in her dreams. I gently kissed her forehead and made a silent vow. "No matter the cost, I will not let anyone take you away from me, my darling daughter." 6 in the morning, the sky was just turning gray. I got out of bed, trying not to wake Sarah and the kids. I was heading to the property management office to check the security tapes, and the sooner the better. I poured myself a glass of cold water in the kitchen, the icy liquid doing little to calm the fire in my gut. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. At this hour? I peered through the peephole. It was Kevin, the young guy from the management office, looking panicked. "Mr. Taylor, trouble," he whispered as soon as I opened the door. "There are some people making a scene in the lobby, looking for you. They don't look friendly. The manager sent me to warn you." My heart seized. "What kind of people?" "A man and a woman. The guy's built like a thug. The woman's pregnant, and they've got a couple of goons with them." Before he could finish, the elevator dinged. We both turned. The doors opened, and Daryl stormed out, Brenda, and 2 menacing-looking men right behind him. One of them was holding a video camera. "That's him, the kidnapper who stole my daughter," Daryl bellowed, pointing at me. I tried to slam the door, but one of the men wedged his foot in the opening. "What are you doing?" "This is breaking and entering." I shoved against the door, but the man was too strong. They forced their way in. "Hope, Mommy's here to take you home," Brenda shrieked. The commotion woke Sarah. She ran out of the bedroom in her pajamas, her face turning white at the sight of them. "Get all on camera," Daryl ordered the man with the camera. "This is the proof. They're holding my daughter against her will." Amid the chaos, I heard Gracie crying from the kids' room. Daryl's eyes lit up, and he charged in that direction. Sarah and I both lunged to stop him, but were grabbed and held back by the 2 goons. "Let go of me. That's my daughter," I roared, struggling against their grip. Sarah was sobbing, screaming Gracie's name. Daryl kicked open the door to the kids' room. We heard Gracie's terrified screams and Sam's guttural roar, a sound he only made when he was furious or terrified. "Get off me, you little freak." Daryl's curse was followed by a sickening thud. Sam, Sarah, with a strength I didn't know she had, broke free and ran for the room. I took the opportunity to throw off the man holding me and followed. The room was a wreck. Sam was on the floor, a gash on his forehead. Gracie was tucked under Daryl's arm, crying hysterically. Baby Belle was wailing from her crib. "Put her down." Sarah launched herself at Daryl, but was shoved against the wall. I helped Sarah up, shielding her with my body. "Daryl, this is kidnapping. We have a legal adoption." "Legal my ass," Brenda screamed. "You forced us to sign that paper." Mrs. Gable saw the whole thing. As if on cue, Mrs. Gable appeared in the doorway, a look of faux concern on her face. "Oh, Frank, dear, I told you, you should have just given the child back to her real parents." "You." I was shaking with rage. "You know exactly how they treated her." Mrs. Gable's eyes flickered. "I don't know anything. I just saw you forcing them to sign some papers." Just then, Sam staggered to his feet, ran at Daryl, and bit down hard on his leg. Daryl yelled in pain and raised his hand to hit Sam, but I dove in front of my son. In the confusion, the cameraman shouted, "I got it." They let their disturbed son attack people. Child endangerment. Sarah tried to grab Gracie, but Brenda blocked her. Gracie reached for Sarah, crying, "Mommy, Mommy." That sound was a knife in my heart. I pulled out my phone to dial 911, but Daryl was unfazed. "Go ahead. The cops can come and see who's right." 5 minutes later, the wail of sirens grew closer. 2 officers walked in. The lead officer was Russo. He took in the scene, his brow furrowed. "Officer, they kidnapped my daughter," I said, grabbing his arm like a lifeline. "Bullshit," Daryl shot back. "They illegally adopted my daughter. We have proof." Mrs. Gable saw everything. Russo looked from me to Daryl, then said grimly, "Everyone down to the station." At the precinct, we were questioned separately. Russo quietly told me that while we had the adoption papers, Daryl and Brenda's claim of coercion, backed by Mrs. Gable's false testimony, made our case weak. And Russo lowered his voice. They went to the media, framing this as public figures in child kidnapping scandal. There's a lot of pressure from above. Public figures? I asked, confused. Sarah's a teacher. You're a tech director. It's a narrative they can sell. Russo sighed. 2 hours later, another officer came in. Mr. Taylor, based on the current evidence, there appear to be procedural issues with your adoption. According to child protective laws, the child will be temporarily returned to the custody of her biological parents. You can pursue this through the legal system. It felt like I'd been struck by lightning. What? You're giving Gracie to them? What about the burns? Didn't you see the scars on her arm? Those injuries cannot be proven to have occurred prior to the adoption, the officer said flatly. If you have concrete evidence, you can present it in court. The sunlight was blinding as I walked out of the station. Sarah leaned on me, sobbing silently, holding a traumatized Sam. Baby Belle was asleep in my mother-in-law's arms, tear tracks still on her cheeks. Gracie. Our Gracie was gone. Back home, the apartment was still in disarray. Gracie's little slippers lay by the door. The half-eaten cookie she'd left on the table was still there. Sarah finally broke down, sinking to her knees and wailing. Gracie, my baby. Sam was curled up in a corner, his eyes vacant, as if he'd retreated completely back into his own world. Belle spiked a high fever. My mother-in-law scrambled for medicine, her own tears streaming down her face. I stood in the middle of the living room, a stone crushing my chest, making it hard to breathe. My phone rang. It was Mr. Roberts from work. Frank, what's going on? The internet is blowing up with stories about you illegally adopting a child. The board has suspended you indefinitely. I hung up, numb. My job, my reputation, none of it mattered. I just wanted my daughter back. 3 days passed. We tried everything to find Gracie, but Daryl's phone was turned off. Our lawyer said the court had accepted our petition, but a hearing was at least a month away. Sarah stopped eating, just staring at photos of Gracie all day. Sam refused to go to school, hiding in the closet where he and Gracie used to play hide and seek. Belle's fever broke, but she became incredibly clingy. On the 4th morning, I received a video from an unknown number. I clicked play. My blood ran cold. The video showed Gracie locked in a small, dark room, her clothes filthy, her face stained with tears. Say it. Say what I told you to say. Daryl's voice commanded off-screen. Gracie sobbed. Daddy, Mommy, I want to come home. The video ended. I tried calling the number back, but it was disconnected. When Sarah saw the video, she nearly fainted. Where are they keeping her? My baby. I took the video straight to Russo. He was furious, but said that without a specific location, his hands were tied. We'll do everything we can, he promised, but you need to prepare for a fight in court. 2 days later, we managed to find Daryl's address through a private investigator, a rundown rental in the suburbs. But when we got there, the landlord told us they'd skipped out the night before, owing 3 months' rent. Another dead end. On the drive home, Sarah stared out the window. Just before we got home, she whispered, Frank, do you think Gracie thinks we abandoned her? The question was a physical blow. A 4-year-old child, forcibly taken from the only loving home she'd ever known. How scared and confused must she be? Late that night, I was on the balcony smoking when my phone buzzed again. Another video. This one was even more heartbreaking. Gracie was thinner, her eyes swollen. Daryl was holding her hand in front of a pile of scratch-off lottery tickets. Touch them. Aren't you a lucky charm? You made your foster parents rich. Now, it's our turn, he said, violently pressing her hand against the tickets. In the final seconds of the video, Gracie looked straight at the camera and mouthed, silently, Daddy, save me. I lost control. I slammed my fist into the wall, splitting my knuckles open. Sarah rushed in, saw the video, and collapsed. We have to do something, she rasped. We can't wait. The next morning, we took a huge risk. Based on clues from the video's background, the silhouette of a building, a blurry street sign, we narrowed our search to an old industrial neighborhood on the east side of the city. With a few friends, we started staking it out. On the 3rd evening, just as we were about to give up, a small, familiar figure appeared at the end of an alley. Gracie. Brenda was dragging her toward a corner store. It's her. Sarah's voice was a choked whisper. We followed, staying out of sight. Gracie looked physically unharmed, but moved like a zombie, her expression blank. They went into a convenience store that sold lottery tickets. Through the window, we saw Daryl was already inside, forcing Gracie to touch a stack of scratch-offs. The other customers didn't seem to care. One of them even laughed. Hey, Daryl, bringing your little moneymaker out for a spin. Daryl puffed out his chest. You know it. This kid's a gold mine. Got snatched by some lowlifes for a while, but I finally got her back. I was shaking with rage. I was about to rush in, but Sarah stopped me. Wait, look. Gracie mechanically touched the tickets. Daryl eagerly scratched them. Nothing. Another one. Nothing. His face grew uglier with each losing ticket. Finally, he backhanded Gracie across the face. Useless brat. She stumbled, but didn't cry, as if she was used to it. I couldn't take it anymore. I kicked the door open. Daryl. He froze, then sneered. Well, look what the cat dragged in. Come and try and steal her again. I've already called the cops. I yelled. The videos of you abusing her are all the proof. They need to take away your parental rights for good. Daryl's face changed. He grabbed Gracie and tried to run for the back door. I moved to block him, but was intercepted by his two goons. By the time my friends and I had dealt with them, Daryl and his family were gone. When the police arrived, the store was a wreck. The owner confirmed Daryl often forced the child to bless his lottery tickets, but refused to give any more information. We had missed our chance again. Back home, despair washed over me. Sarah held Sam, who had started banging his head against the wall again, a self-harming behavior from his most anxious days. As we sat there, hopeless, my phone rang. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Taylor, this is Lisa, Daryl's cousin. I can't watch this anymore. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., they're taking Hope to the children's hospital to get their son tested. Here's the address. Sarah and I looked at each other. Was this a trap or a genuine offer of help? Either way, it was our last hope. Tomorrow, I said, squeezing her hand, we are bringing Gracie home. That night, I stood on the balcony looking out at the city lights. What would happen tomorrow? Will we get her back? Would the law be on our side? I had no answers. But I was sure of one thing. No matter what it took, I would bring Gracie back to this family, back to the people who loved her, because she was our daughter, our treasure, and that would never change. 5 a.m, the sky was still dark. I got out of bed, trying not to wake Sarah. She'd barely slept in days, finally succumbing to a doctor-prescribed sleeping pill last night. In the kitchen, I downed a glass of ice water, trying to douse the fire in my chest. Lisa's text felt like a burning coal in my phone. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Children's Hospital, 3rd floor, Pediatric Specialist Clinic. It was our last lead, and possibly our last chance. Frank. Sarah's voice came from behind me. She was standing in the doorway, pale and hollow-eyed. You're awake? Go back to sleep. I want to guide her back to bed. She shook her head. I can't. Her eyes fell on my phone. Today, we're going to the hospital. I nodded. But you're not going? In your condition. I have to go, she said, her voice soft but unyielding. Gracie needs to see that we both came for her. I opened my mouth to argue, but the resolve in her eyes stopped me. I sighed. At least eat something. At 7, my mother-in-law arrived to watch Sam and Belle. Sam's autistic symptoms had regressed severely since Gracie was taken. He spent his days in silence, methodically completing the same puzzle over and over, the one Gracie had taught him. Belle had become intensely clingy, needing to be held constantly. Be careful, my mother-in-law warned, her eyes full of worry. Those people are capable of anything. At 8, Sarah and I left for the hospital. I called our lawyer on the way. He advised us not to confront Daryl directly, but to gather evidence. If you witness abuse, call 911 immediately, he said. But you must have concrete proof. The hospital parking lot was already packed. We found a spot and went straight to the 3rd floor. The waiting area was crowded with parents and sick children. We found an inconspicuous corner to sit, our eyes glued to the elevators. Will they show up? Sarah asked, gripping my arm. I don't know, I whispered back. But this is all we have. The minutes crawled by. The digital clock on the wall read 9:45. Still no sign of them. Sarah began chewing her fingernails, a habit from her most anxious moments. 9:58. The elevator doors opened. My heart leaped into my throat. It was Brenda. She waddled out, followed by a small, frail-looking boy of about 5 or 6, who walked with a limp and had visible facial deformities. But Daryl and Gracie were nowhere to be seen. Where's Gracie? Sarah whispered urgently. I put a hand on her arm. Wait. Brenda took the boy to the check-in desk, then sat down not far from us. The boy was coughing incessantly, his face ashen. 10:15. Still just Brenda and her son. I began to wonder if Lisa's tip was wrong, or if this was all just a cruel trap. Just then, a commotion came from the stairwell. I turned to see Daryl dragging Gracie out, a man in a white coat following them. Gracie was even thinner than she'd looked in the videos. Her face was pale, her eyes red and swollen, and she stumbled as she walked, as if she might collapse at any moment. Gracie! Sarah shot to her feet, her voice a choked sob. Gracie heard her and looked up, her eyes widening in disbelief when she saw us. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. Daryl saw us too. His face twisted in anger, and he yanked Gracie behind him. What do you want? We're here to see our daughter, I said, stepping forward, fighting to keep my voice level. What have you done to her? Why is she so weak? None of your damn business. Daryl sneered. She's my daughter now. I'll do whatever I want with her. The other parents in the waiting room began to murmur and pull out their phones. Daryl, seeing the audience, became even more brazen. Everyone look at this. This couple illegally adopted my daughter, and now they're trying to kidnap her. Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She rushed forward. Gracie, Mommy's here. Gracie finally broke down, crying and struggling to reach Sarah, but Daryl held her small arm in a death grip. Stay put. Stop it. A commanding voice cut through the chaos. It was the doctor in the white coat, a man in his 50s with a stern expression. This is a hospital. Please be quiet. Doctor, I said, grabbing onto the hope he represented. That child is being abused. We're her adoptive parents. We have the legal paperwork. The doctor looked at me, then at Daryl and the fragile Gracie. His eyes sharpened. This child needs an immediate examination. I am Dr. Ramirez, the head of pediatrics. Please follow me. Daryl grumbled, but, under the gaze of a room full of people, followed the doctor into an exam room. Sarah and I went in right behind them. Inside, Dr. Ramirez had Gracie lie on the examination table. When he rolled up her sleeve, everyone in the room gasped. Her thin arm was a roadmap of bruises, old and new, and the distinct marks of fingers digging into her flesh. What is this? Dr. Ramirez demanded of Daryl. She fell. Daryl blustered. Dr. Ramirez ignored him and continued his examination. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, multiple soft tissue contusions. He lifted Gracie's shirt. Her back was covered in the faint, crisscrossing lines of welts from a belt or switch. Call the police, Dr. Ramirez said to a nurse. He turned to Gracie. Sweetheart, how many days has it been since you've eaten? Gracie's voice was a whisper. 3 days. I only drank water. Sarah burst into tears and threw her arms around Gracie. Oh, my poor baby. Why? Gracie leaned into her, whispering, I wanted to come home. I wanted my mommy and daddy. They wouldn't let me. Seeing this, Daryl lunged forward to grab Gracie. Stop your acting. We're going home. Dr. Ramirez and I both blocked his path. Just then, the door opened and 2 police officers walked in. What's going on here? Officer. Daryl was the first to speak. They're trying to kidnap my daughter. But Dr. Ramirez stepped forward. I'm the one who called. This child has multiple signs of abuse and has been refusing food, leading to severe malnutrition. I suspect she has been a victim of long-term abuse. The officers examined Gracie's injuries, their expressions hardening. Everyone is coming down to the station to give a statement. The child needs to be admitted to the hospital immediately. Daryl panicked. Wait, I'm her biological father. I have rights. Until this investigation is complete, the child is under the hospital's care, the officer said, his tone final. Brenda suddenly rushed in, pulling her sick son with her. Officer, our son is very ill. We need hope. We need our daughter to donate bone marrow. The room fell silent. So that was it. They needed Gracie back to save their other child. Dr. Ramirez examined the boy, his brow furrowed. This child does need a transplant, but the donor must be in good health. In this girl's current state. We can wait, Brenda said desperately. We can wait for her to get better, and then... That's enough. I roared. What do you think she is? A piece of medical equipment. The police took all of us to the station. During my questioning, Russo pulled me aside. Frank, you have a real chance this time. The hospital's medical evaluation is powerful evidence. But the adoption papers... I was still worried. Dr. Ramirez already contacted social services and verified your adoption records, Russo said. While there might have been a few procedural shortcuts, considering the child's well-being in your care, the court is very likely to side with you. The questioning lasted all afternoon. Sarah stayed at the hospital with Gracie the entire time. When I was done, I rushed back. In the hospital room, Gracie was on an 4-drip, a little color returning to her cheeks. Sarah sat by her bed, holding her hand. When Gracie saw me, her eyes lit up. Daddy! The sound brought tears to my eyes. I walked over and gently hugged her. I'm sorry, sweetie. Daddy was late. She shook her head, her small hand clutching my shirt. I knew you and Mommy would come. For me. It turned out Gracie had deliberately gone on a hunger strike to force Daryl to take her to a hospital where she knew she could get help. This little girl, not even 5 years old, had such cunning and courage. That evening, we got news from a precinct. Daryl was being held on child abuse charges. Brenda was released pending trial due to her pregnancy. Gracie was officially placed under hospital guardianship until the court's ruling. And there's a bonus, Russo said over the phone. One of Daryl's old business partners saw the news and came forward to report him for fraud. Turns out your guy is a career con artist. That night, Sarah and I took turns watching over Gracie. After her condition stabilized, Dr. Ramirez spoke with us. Her physical recovery will take time, he said, but the psychological trauma will require long-term therapy. He handed me a file. This is her medical record from when she was 3. She was treated here for similar injuries. The attending physician remembers the case clearly. I opened the file. My heart clenched. 2 years ago, Gracie had been admitted for a fractured rib and severe burns. At the time, Daryl and Brenda had claimed she fell into a pot of boiling water. This record proves a pattern of long-term abuse, Dr. Ramirez said. I will testify to that in court tomorrow. Back in the room, Gracie was asleep. Sarah was slumped in a chair, exhausted but refusing to leave. Go get some rest. I urged her. I'll stay. She shook her head. I'm afraid if I close my eyes, she'll be gone again. I understood her fear. The past few weeks had been a living hell for all of us. Late that night, I looked at Gracie's peaceful sleeping face and thought about the scared, wary child who had first come into our lives. She was weak now, but the determination in her eyes was stronger than ever. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother-in-law. Sam said 2 words today, sister. He keeps pointing at the door. I think he's waiting for Gracie to come home. I texted back. Tell him his sister is coming home very soon. I looked out the window. The city lights glittered, as if the nightmare of the past few weeks had never happened. But I knew some wounds would take a long time to heal. Not just Gracie's, but Sam's, Sarah's, and my own. The first ray of sunlight streamed into the room. Gracie woke up, saw us, and smiled, a look of pure relief on her face. Mommy, Daddy, she whispered. I dreamed I was home, playing with brother and baby sister. Sarah kissed her forehead. It's not a dream, sweetie. We're really going home soon. That morning, the court held an emergency hearing, citing Gracie's health and the hospital's evidence of abuse. The judge ruled that pending the final verdict, Gracie would be returned to our custody. Finally, Sarah broke down in tears when she heard the news. After finishing the discharge paperwork, we carefully carried Gracie to the car. She was so light it hurt. She pressed her face to the window, drinking in the familiar sight of our city. Home, she whispered. Yes, home. Back to the home where her brother and sister were waiting. Back to the home that, while imperfect, was filled with love. As we pulled into our neighborhood, Gracie's eyes lit up. In the elevator, she held my hand tightly, as if afraid we would vanish. The door opened. My mother-in-law stood there, holding Belle. Sam was hiding behind the sofa, only his eyes visible. Sister. Seeing Gracie, Sam suddenly bolted out from behind the couch, moving with a speed that stunned us all. He threw his arms around her, patting her back awkwardly, just as Sarah did to comfort him. Gracie hugged him back. Brother, I'm home. My mother-in-law wiped her eyes. Baby Belle, sensing the change in atmosphere, giggled and reached for Gracie. At that moment, I knew that no matter what legal battles lay ahead, we had already won. Because love was the most invincible force of all. That night, we all piled into one bed, at Gracie's insistence. She lay between me and Sarah, holding Sam's hand on one side and Baby Belle's on the other, as if afraid we'd all float away if she let go. Daddy, she asked just before falling asleep, can I still go to school? Of course you can, I said, kissing her forehead. You can do anything you want. Gracie closed her eyes, a contented smile on her face, and quickly fell asleep. Sarah and I lay awake for a long time, just watching our 3 children breathe. Outside, the moon hung high in the sky, casting down its cool white light. Tomorrow, we still had to face the court's final decision. Tomorrow, Daryl and Brenda might still have tricks up their sleeves. Tomorrow, Gracie's psychological wounds would need years of care to heal. But tonight, our family was together, and that was enough. The courthouse steps were swarming with reporters. I held Gracie in my arms as Sarah and I walked hand in hand through a blinding sea of camera flashes. Gracie buried her face in my shoulder, her fingers twisting the fabric of my suit jacket. Mr. Taylor, are you confident about today's verdict? Mrs. Taylor, can you ever forgive Daryl and Brenda Miller? Gracie, how are you feeling? The questions came like a tidal wave. I ignored them, shielding Gracie as we pushed our way into the courthouse. Today was the day of the final ruling, the day that would decide her future. Nervous? I asked Sarah in the waiting room. She shook her head, but her knuckles were white from clenching her fists. Gracie sat between us, holding both our hands, surprisingly calm. In the past month, she had mostly recovered physically, but the psychological scars remained. She still woke up from nightmares, needing to see us by her side before she could fall back asleep. Mr. Taylor, it's time. Our lawyer, Mr. Davies, entered, his expression a mix of seriousness and excitement. There's been a development. Daryl's wife, Brenda, has decided to testify against him. Sarah and I exchanged a look of disbelief. Brenda testifying against Daryl? What new game was this? The courtroom was solemn. Daryl sat at the defendant's table in a prison jumpsuit, his eyes full of hate. Brenda, her belly swollen, sat in the witness box, looking pale and avoiding Daryl's gaze. We sat at the plaintiff's table, Gracie on Sarah's lap. The trial began. The prosecutor presented the evidence. Witness statements about Daryl's repeated abandonment of Gracie, the hospital's medical evaluation detailing the abuse, the security footage from the convenience store, and records from Daryl's fraud case. Based on this evidence, the prosecutor concluded the plaintiffs, Frank and Sarah Taylor, are fully capable of providing a stable and loving home for the child. The defendant, Daryl Miller, has a long history of child abuse and other criminal activities. We asked the court to award full custody to the Taylors. Daryl's lawyer tried to argue that the injuries occurred after the adoption, but the judge immediately shut him down, citing the hospital records that prove the abuse was long-term. The court calls Brenda Miller to the stand, the judge announced. Brenda walked unsteadily to the witness stand. Mrs. Miller, the prosecutor began, can you tell the court if the child, formerly known as Hope Miller, was ever subjected to abuse in your home? Brenda bit her lip, then spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Yes, he hit her a lot, burned her with cigarettes, said girls were worthless. A murmur went through the courtroom. Daryl leaped to his feet, shouting obscenities before being forced back into his seat by the bailiffs. Why are you only saying this now? The prosecutor asked. Brenda broke down, sobbing. I was scared. He hit me too, but this time he went too far. He almost killed her just to get some money. She touched her stomach. If anything happens to this one, I don't want to live anymore. It turned out Brenda was pregnant with another girl. After finding out, Daryl had become even more abusive. Desperate for money for their son's medical bills, he had blamed everything on Gracie, stealing his luck, and had taken out on her. I'm testifying, Brenda choked out, because the Taylors are good to Gracie. They're 100 times better than we ever were. She's safe with them. I know she is. Daryl continued to curse from the defendant's table until the judge threatened him with contempt of court. After a short recess, the judge delivered the verdict. Given Daryl Miller's long-term abuse of a minor, his criminal record, and his lack of stable income, this court hereby terminates his parental rights. The adoption by Frank and Sarah Taylor is ruled legal and valid. Full and permanent custody of the minor, Grace Taylor, is awarded to Frank and Sarah Taylor. Sarah cried out, pulling Gracie into a tight hug. My own eyes burned as I gave the judge a deep, grateful bow. Gracie didn't fully understand, but seeing us so happy, she started to smile. As Daryl was led away, he shot us a final, hateful glare. This isn't over. You'll pay for this. But his threats were empty. Between the fraud and child abuse charges, he was facing at least 10 years in prison. Brenda, for her cooperation, received a suspended sentence. Outside, the sun was painfully bright. The reporters swarmed us again, but this time I stopped. Thank you all for your concern, I said, my voice clear. Today, justice was served. More importantly, our daughter has been given the bright future she deserves. We will spend the rest of our lives helping her heal with all the love we have. Mr. Taylor, a female reporter asked, you've been called America's kindest dad. What do you want to say to the public? I looked down at Gracie, who was now curiously playing with my tie. I'm not especially kind. Any decent human being would have done the same thing. Gracie is our daughter. That will never change. On the way home, Gracie fell asleep in the car. Sarah gently stroked her hair and said suddenly, Frank, I want to write a book. A book? Yes. About our story. Her eyes were shining. Maybe it could help other children like Gracie and other families like ours. I took her hand. That's a wonderful idea. And I can start a small foundation to help adoptive families with legal and medical costs. Sarah smiled, the first truly relaxed smile I'd seen on her face in months. When we got home, my mother-in-law had prepared a celebratory feast. Sam saw us and ran over, taking Gracie's hand. Sister, home. In the past 2 months, his language had exploded. His therapist said his autism was now in remission. Baby Belle, toddling in her walker, babbled happily and reached for Gracie. Gracie, the little big sister, gently patted Belle's back and hummed a tuneless lullaby. Watching them, I understood that happiness isn't a journey without storms, but a gift that is all the more precious because of them. 3 months later, Gracie's adoption was ironclad, officially making her a tailor in the eyes of the law. Sarah's book, My Lucky Star, became a bestseller, leading to interviews that shone a light on the struggles of similar families. The foundation I started, the Gracie Fund, had already helped a dozen families navigate the legal and medical complexities of adoption. My company not only reinstated me, but promoted me, citing my positive public image. Sam thrived in elementary school. Gracie was the star of her first grade class, and Belle was a happy toddler, always trailing after her older siblings. As for Daryl, he earned more time on his sentence for fighting in prison. Brenda gave birth to a healthy baby girl, and, with the help of a women's shelter, moved back to her hometown with her 2 children, where she opened a small convenience store. Life had returned to a new normal, but we were all changed. We cherished each other more fiercely, more aware of how fragile happiness can be. 5 years later, on Gracie's 10th birthday, we took a trip to a special place, the trash-strewn street corner where I first found her. It had been cleaned up, part of a city beautification project. Brightly colored recycling bins stood where the dumpster used to be, surrounded by flower beds. Gracie, in a pretty pink dress, looked around curiously. "Daddy, why did you bring me here?" I knelt to look her in the eye. "Because this is our lucky spot. 10 years ago, right here, I met you." Her eyes widened. "This is where I was left." "Yes," I said, pulling her into a hug. "But I want you to know, this isn't a place of shame. It's the place where our luck began. Because of you, our whole family found happiness." Tears welled in Gracie's eyes, but she was smiling. "So, I really am a lucky star." "Of course you are," Sarah said, coming over to kiss her forehead. "You brought all the luck in the world to our family." Sam, now a lanky preteen, handed her a wrapped gift. "Happy birthday, sis." Belle, a chatterbox at 5, chimed in, "Happy birthday, Gracie." Gracie opened the gift. It was a beautiful scrapbook filled with photos from the day she joined our family. Her first birthday party, her first day of school, playing with Sam, holding a newborn Belle. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching the scrapbook to her chest. "It's the best present I've ever gotten." As we were leaving, Gracie ran back and placed a small wildflower next to the recycling bin. "Goodbye," she whispered, "and thank you for letting me find my daddy." On the walk home, the setting sun cast our shadows long on the pavement. Sarah pushed Belle in her stroller while Sam and Gracie chased each other ahead. I walked behind them, watching this scene, so warm it felt almost unreal. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah's publisher. "Frank, My Lucky Star just passed 500,000 copies. Readers are dying for an update on Gracie. Any chance of a follow-up interview?" I typed back, "Thank you, but I think we'll pass. Gracie is just a normal kid now, and she deserves a quiet, happy childhood." I put my phone away and hurried to catch up with my family. Gracie turned and grinned at me. "Daddy, hurry up. It's time for cake." Her smile was brilliant in the evening light, pure and full of hope. And I knew, in that moment, that no matter what the future held, as long as we were together, we had everything we'd ever need. Because love was the only lucky charm that ever really mattered. And our family finally was full of it.